The Podbreed Network is strictly for the small podcasts that are up and coming in the vast world of podcasting. Podbreed is made up of many diverse podcasts, coming together to achieve the same goal of being the best damn podcast network on the planet. Find out more at podbreed.com.
There are over 2 million podcasts, but how many of those can massage the mind, elevate the senses, take you to another plateau? Allow me to introduce you to Drea's Point of View, the 10-minute or less podcast that brings you observations and experiences from her perspective.
So I had the opportunity to attend my very first Ambies Awards show, as well as my very first podcast movement conference in Las Vegas this year. So because it was Vegas, I definitely didn't have a problem going, especially after I found out who one of the keynote speakers was. I listened to 2 other podcasters review their experience at the Ambies, and now I wanted to give you mine. Thanks so much for tuning in to Drea's Point of View. I will be your hostess, Drea, for the next few minutes, and I would love if you would consider following me on Twitter at Drea Point, and on Facebook, IG, Clubhouse, and Pinterest at Drea's Point of View. The Ambie Awards, it's like the Oscars of podcasting. It was hosted at a great location, about a block and a half from the Strip. Beautiful lobby, great staff, and amazing rooms as well. Very large rooms. After you check in, you get a welcome text and an invitation to communicate with the staff that way, as opposed to talking to them on the phone, which I thought was great. Well, you got to think about it too. Not too many places are going to put you up somewhere crappy for a convention, right? So I think I'll consider staying there again. So the days leading up to this festival, I got text and a QR code that would be necessary for checking in. I got to admit, the check-in process for the podcast movement was one of the quickest that I've ever had. I picked up my badge before the conference started, got a tote bag with some information inside. I was already impressed. Like, I'm all about doing things quickly. Not to mention there were tons of volunteers available to direct you. So, that was nice to see. Now, that first night, so Tuesday night, earlier this month, was the Ambie Awards. Okay, it's actually in its 3rd year, but ironically, I'm in my 3rd year of podcasting and haven't heard of them. I knew 2 nominees, and I figured since it was free, why not attend? Those nominees are the Q Points Podcast, and of course, Queer News. Now, of all the award shows I've been to, I've got to say it was probably the most efficient. Production was on point. They deserved an award for how everything ran so smoothly. It was slated to last an hour and a half, and that's how long it lasted. We may have gotten out a few minutes early. You went through security after they marked your name off a list. The MC got on the mic about 10 minutes prior, gave us the rules of the road, telling people to get their selfies out of the way now because your phones need to be shut off. She told people that they have 30 seconds, get to the stage, 30 seconds to say what they need to say, and that was it. And they stuck to it. I heard there was a huge timer, so they made sure that they abided by that time. I love it. The host was Larry Wilmore. And there were plenty of categories. You could check them out, the list of nominees and winners online. I believe it's ambies.com. So I honestly didn't know that Q Points would be. We met actually at another conference last year. I didn't know they were attending this year. Otherwise, I would have sat near them. They actually, they were nominated, and they had a category for the best DIY podcast. And that's where you have to have a budget under $3,000. I didn't even know that was a thing. Who has a budget? I think I may know one or two podcasters who may go over that budget, but that's it's an amazing category to be in. And the phenomenal Anna Deshawn from Q3 Radio, the host of Queer News One. She swept the Black Podcast Awards last year, so definitely check her podcast out. She gave the best speech of the night, in my opinion. Production, like I said, they were on point. There were no snafus or unnecessary pauses. The show ended on time. There were ushers directing us out in an orderly fashion. Definitely the best show I've attended. So check them out, ambies.com, and try and go to future Ambie Awards. You definitely won't be, or just submit. You definitely won't be disappointed. Now, getting to the conference itself, I didn't stay for the whole conference. I stayed for maybe half of it because I was doing double duty. I actually had to be a tour guide for one of my best friends' birthday week. So I was really drained that first day. It was really all a blur. Everything looked organized. You know, you had it was in a ballroom type setting. There were different rooms off to the side. Definitely a lot of people were there. I did like the branding of one podcaster. Her name, I can't think of what the name is actually offhand, but she had her I believe it was her podcast name and her QR code on M&Ms, which were placed on our seats. Much as I love M&Ms, well, I'll eat them. I just don't want to mess it up because of how beautiful her branding is. I do like how there was an area inside of where the sessions were held to grab food, and there was plenty of seating for everyone. It was more of a professional vibe than what I'm used to in the past with the conferences. I'd say about a good 75% of the people brought their laptops to these sessions. Mine stayed on my bed at home because honestly, it was the last thing I was thinking about bringing to Vegas. Although it was really the primary reason for me being there, trying to learn. My pen and paper worked just fine, as well as my phone. Now, the next day was a little bit more interesting to me, session-wise. Everything started and ended on time, which I love. Each session was about 45 minutes long, which gave us 15 minutes to get to the next one or stop at the vendors. The signage was easy to read. We had booklets, and of course, you had plenty of volunteers to ask. 2 podcasters that I followed were speakers. The award-winning host of Queer News, Anna. She was on a panel of all women talking about how we needed a space for us as BIPOC. It was definitely the most interesting session and definitely necessary. Danielle Desir, she hostess of a travel podcast whose name I cannot think of the name. I apologize. But she was definitely impressive. She was talking about having a media kit. She had a slideshow presentation. It was probably the most packed session that I attended. She had everyone's attention. She definitely was amazing. There was even one led by a podcast lawyer, which was very useful. I didn't even know there was a podcast lawyer, but I guess there's a lawyer for everything. I didn't stay, like I said, I didn't stay for the whole time, but I did end my day with one of the keynote speakers, Stephen A. Smith. You know, he's got his podcast out now. So he spoke with someone for about 30 minutes talking about his background in broadcasting, how he has his book out and his podcast, and he's trying to get a late night talk show. We saw the serious side of Stephen A. And of course, he did make a few people laugh. But yeah, that was really the main reason for me attending was to see him. And it was a great conference overall. I didn't attend any of the parties, though. They did have after parties because, like I said, my time was split between the conference and my friend. There is one next year in Los Angeles, but I think I'll just volunteer for that one. You know, sometimes you can get information overload, so I want to try to apply some of that stuff to my podcast. I know the theme was really trying to be less hands-on and try to get as much editing and show notes and stuff done by other I can't think right now, other organizations that can help you out with that. But please don't hesitate to go online and check out the future podcast movements. I believe there's one in Denver this summer. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my tri-weekly episodes. I thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to Drea's Point of View. Remember to subscribe to this female-hosted podcast. Drea's Point of View is now available on Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.